Big, bold, and beautiful, from fantastic foliage and blooms to garden personalities. It all starts in 30 seconds. Hi, I'm Alan Smith. Welcome to the show. Well, spring is beginning to spring, and I hope wherever you are, you're beginning to see some signs of the season. In my garden, there are early indications that this will be a great year for my spring blooming bulbs. I planted a range of tulips throughout the garden, and the vegetable garden is bursting forth with some cool season crops. It's been a pleasure to pick a salad almost every night for the last few weeks. Now, speaking of dinner, we're going to visit a place where chefs come and they create some impressive dishes. We'll put them to work coming up. We'll also check out some big, bold, and beautiful blooming plants that will perform for you until the first cool days of autumn. I have to tell you, I was so swept away by the blooms at this Missouri peony farm that I couldn't wait to plant a few of these at my new garden site. We'll also get some tips on how to best grow peonies in various parts of the country. Now, if you like what you saw, you'll want to stay tuned for those tips. But right now, let's head into the break, and when we return, we'll catch up with a friend of mine from England, but not in the UK. We'll visit with her on this side of the pond. Stay with us. Just flipping through some photographs of English gardens I took last year on a trip. Gosh, they are so beautiful. I had the good fortune to study garden history and design when I was a student. And there I got really turned on by the different styles of English gardens you can see. It's always great fun to see familiar faces, such as the Viscount and Viscountess Ashbrook at Arley Hall, and walk the grounds so carefully cared for by Lady Elizabeth Ashbrook and her daughter Jane Foster. You've no doubt heard me mention this garden many times on the show. My own designs have been influenced by the historic perennial borders on the estate, as well as by this family who's taken a lifelong interest in ensuring this garden's place in the future. Now, another gardening family that has impressed me is the Earl and Countess of Arran. I've had several opportunities to visit their beautiful home and garden at Castle Hill in Devon. And it was a visit with Lady Arran recently at the DuPont estate that I was reminded yet again of what a passionate garden preservationist she is. Well, who would have thought we would have ended up together in a garden here in America?
Well, it's a real treat to be here at Winterthur.
Well, I think that I don't think it's ever rained quite this much when I've been in England in your garden.
Well, I think we've always been lucky, but actually, let's face it, for us gardeners, we're thrilled to see the rain.
It's very good, isn't it? Well, you know, the great thing about this garden is that I think it has so many dimensions, and certainly one of the most important is the woodland garden.
Well, that's something I feel great empathy with, because this is exactly what we have at Castle Hill.
Now, there's some real connections between Winterthur and Castle Hill. I mean, Mr. DuPont actually came to Castle Hill.
Well, he did indeed, and we've got records, or you have at Winterthur here, of when he visited in 1911.
Well, he was very taken with this idea of a woodland garden.
Yes.
Right from the beginning.
Well, he must have been very innovative in his thinking. And wonderful as it is to have the formal gardens around the house, when you're going off on your walks, you need other interests.
Now, you walk through the woods here at Winterthur, and you can see the work of Mr. DuPont in the mid-20th century,
yes.
Early to mid-20th century, yes. Where they were carving out the vistas through this gorgeous woodland.
Yes, yes. I think that's wonderful to be able to retain these vistas, but somehow one has to encourage the next generation to do so, because trees grow up.
Right.
and one's inclined to think, well, I can't cut trees down. Well, I have to say that I don't subscribe to that view. If vistas get ruined, trees must go.
Right, you lose the effect.
You do, absolutely.
Well, here at the end of summer and the onset of fall, if you look closely, you can see really interesting fruits on all sorts of plants.
Yes, I've noticed that. The magnolias have the most wonderful red fruits, don't they?
They really are outstanding.
So what sort of exotics have you got here?
Well, you know, what's in flower now is the heptacodium.
Oh, they're so pretty, aren't they? I mean, they're really a late summer treat.
They're gorgeous, along with so many of the hydrangeas.
I know, and they are looking marvellous at the moment. Also, they'll be frightfully pleased to have had this rain, won't they?
They will, and the color of the leaf is coming out this time of year.
It really is.
You can't forget about foliage. Well, it's been so wonderful seeing you here on this side of the pond.
Well, it's been the greatest treat for me to be here. I've loved every minute of my visit.
I have to say, the Countess and I were rightfully impressed with the fruit sets gracing the trees and shrubs at Winterthur. But now if you want to see something really impressive, get ready for this burst of color. We'll explore great plants, both foliage and bloomers, that'll knock your socks off. That's right after this break, so don't go away. Welcome back. You know, color is one of the most important and exciting components of garden design. I learned years ago the importance of creating color echoes if you want to establish a harmonious color scheme. And that's what we're seeing right here with this beautiful limelight hydrangea anchoring the corner of the bed. But we've got a color echo going on with this variegated leaf of the lantana. And you can see that the lightest tips of the lantana leaf match the tips of the hydrangea bloom. Now, what's great about this limelight hydrangea is that its blooms throughout the growing season are just going to get better and better. From time to time in the show, I've updated you on the progress of my new house and garden. Well, the garden's coming along, although we have a long way to go. And I have to say, the house is moving a little slower than I'd like. You know, when you design these things and you lay them out, you get a finished image in your head, and you just want to see it immediately. The architect and builder are telling me that we're moving along at the right pace and that I just need to calm down and enjoy the process. So while I've been waiting, I've turned my attention to the garden. You know, I don't want too much time to pass when I can see some improvements, and we're making some real headway out here. I've been considering plants already for next year's garden. I recently talked to an expert about some great bloomers and great foliage plants that not only will work out here in my garden, but will perform beautifully across the country. Jim, you guys have a spectacular display garden here. What criteria do you use to choose the plants, and how do you choose favorites with so many?
Well, the biggest thing I'm looking for is bloom time. You know, 3-season blooming is probably would hit the top of my list.
What are some of your favorites?
Favorites would be Supertunia Vista Bubblegum.
Oh wow, that's a killer.
That petunia is a great landscape plant, just blooms its head off all the time.
It does. It's been very good for me.
Diamond Frost Euphorbia is another one, a very delicate flower and actually a very delicate looking plant, but sturdy as anything. Holds up to really strong weather and any kind of conditions.
The color works with anything. It's a white, misty sort of bloom.
Yeah.
It's a good blender.
Yeah, it really fits in with a lot of different plants. I like to use it a lot with combinations and that
What about
it,
the Angelonias? How do they rank for you?
Angelonias are very high. I mean, they're great summer plants especially. They come on a little later in the spring, but once they get going, they're blooming all the time.
Well, those are some great choices, Jim. I mean, with that, any garden would shine.
It surely will.
Now, if you think the plants Jim showed us are something, then you're going to love what we've got coming up next, peonies. What you need to know to have success with these beauties. And a little later, this tasty dish fresh from a culinary school kitchen. Before we head to a break, here's one more idea for getting color in the garden. Now, this is a plant with a funny name. It's called a calabracoa. And now with the introduction of super bells, home gardeners are going to love this plant because of its disease tolerance and self-cleaning. It's also low-growing and packed with vigorous blooms. Super Bell's red is covered in deep red flowers that look great in combination with orange, purple, and golden yellow. Hey, you need to remember there's more color for the garden on the web at pallansmith.com. Okay, now I'm going to tempt you here with a few images of a really remarkable flower. This is the peony, and just look at the range of colors and bloom styles there are to choose from. And just look at the bouquet you can make with these. What a punch of color! Well, I enjoy seeing peonies planted among other garden flowers in the cottage style. I decided to use my garden to experiment with a more formal setting. I decided to create a circle, so I selected a site and placed a stake in the center. Measuring out from there, I was able to identify the circle and mark it with surveyor flags and then paint. With my form in place, it was time to remove all of the turf in this area. So I dug it out and began working up the existing soil. Now I wanted to loosen the soil to about 1 foot. So next I amended the soil with sand, humus, and some well-rotted cow manure. And a motorized tiller helped speed up the process. What we're looking for here is rich, well-drained soil. Next, I wanted to define the edge of the bed so I used a favorite evergreen. What I'm using here is a boxwood called green velvet. Now, to plant the ring of boxwoods around the circle, I dig holes that are slightly larger than the root balls. They're going to love this new rich soil. You'll notice that the boxwoods are evenly spaced, about 15 inches from the center of each plant to the next plant. And what I give them is a good drink of water before moving on. Now for the peonies. I dug a hole about 8 inches across and just deep enough that the top of the tuber will be covered. Now this is important. I make sure that the eyes of the peony tuber are only about 1 inch to 1.5 inches below the surface of the soil. Now in the base of the hole and under the tuber, I add some compost and bone meal. You see, this nutrient-rich soil will allow the roots to easily transition into their new home. Now, the second to the last thing I do is water the peony tubers in, and I make sure that they don't settle below that soil line that I mentioned earlier. And the last thing, I just mulch them in. This will be a charming new focal point for me, and with the addition of this bird bath, the birds. I have to say, my inspiration for planting this came from a visit to this beautiful peony farm in Sarcoxie, Missouri. Welcome to Gilbert H. Wild Peony Farm. Greg Jones shares with us some peony planting tips and a few of his favorite varieties. Greg, are you ever asked, why do you grow over 600 different varieties of peonies? I mean, that just seems like a mind-boggling number.
Well, 600 is a mind-boggling number, but as you can see, every peony variety is different. We start off with the double, which is a true double flower.
Like peppermint here.
Like peppermint. And then there's another classification that's called a semi-double. A good example of that would be red charm. Then we have what's called an anemone type, which is it has the real fluffy in the center and a single row of petals on the outside. And then there's the true single, which just have 1 or 2 rows of petals on the outside and small stamens in the middle. So we have all 4 types. They come in every different size and color and shape and texture. And everybody's landscape is their own personality. So that's why we offer so many.
So what's going on in the world of peonies for the future?
Well, the peony has been evolving for years. Those that were in the 1850s were great plants, but every year there's more introduced. This is a newer introduction, introduced in the mid-1980s, called Mandarin's Coat. We really like this plant. It's short, it's compact, the flowers stand up well above the foliage, and even on a windy day like today, it just radiates in the garden. Now, this is one that would not fall over in your garden. It would never need staking. It's real light, and for that reason, it's good for the homeowner. We're working on a new variety.
This pink one just here?
Yeah, that's a new one we hope to bring to the marketplace in the next 3 years.
What's the name of it?
You know, it's so new, we haven't even named it yet.
Really?
They've been in production for about 18 years, and it's rare. I've never seen this centering that has come through on these before.
It's so uniform and tight.
And it maintains throughout the life of the flower. As the flower gets older, it's still tight, and that's what we like. We like it's compact, it stands up well in the wind, it blooms over a long period of time. It's an excellent color. We're really hot on this one. Peonies need 3 to 4 weeks of freezing weather to bloom. And so if you have less than that, they won't grow in your area. But if you use a single variety, a very early double variety, they will bloom in the south because their chilling requirements are less. So we recommend that many of the singles would work in the deep south, and the doubles will work anywhere in the nation except where it doesn't freeze.
So there is indeed a peony for everyone.
There is a peony for everyone.
Greg and I must have walked 3 miles exploring these beautiful peony varieties. There were so many to see. We certainly worked up an appetite, and I hope you have too, because we've got a great recipe segment coming up right after this break. You might say this chef is on the cutting edge. This is the Viking Cooking School in Greenwood, Mississippi. I had a chance to stop in at the school and brush up on my cooking skills and came away with some great recipes, including this one.
Today we're making a marinated feta bruschetta. We started by toasting some baguette slices. We've brushed them with a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of salt and pepper, ran them in a 400-degree oven for about 10 minutes until they're light golden brown. We have 1 pound of fresh feta cheese that's been diced, 1/4 cup of parsley, 3 tablespoons of fresh basil, 3 tablespoons of oregano, and 2 tablespoons of fresh thyme leaves. and a little pinch of cayenne pepper, and some lemon zest, which is the outer yellow part of the lemon rind. We're going to use a fine grater just to get that little colored part off. We're going to avoid the white pith that can be a little bit bitter. Then we're going to take our lemon and juice it. We'll need about 2 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice and 2 cloves of fresh garlic. We're going to pop these right in our food processor with the mini bowl attachment. With the motor running, we're going to add our garlic cloves. We're just going to toss in our fresh basil, 1/4 cup of fresh parsley, 2 tablespoons of fresh oregano, our fresh thyme, and we're going to drizzle in our olive oil. We're using extra virgin olive oil, and we're going to slowly add it to make a nice emulsion. Now we're going to add our fresh lemon zest, our lemon juice, and a little pinch of cayenne, a little bit of salt and pepper. Lemon zest really gives it a nice, fresh kick. Freshly ground black pepper. Freshly ground sea salt. I'm going to pulse this a couple of times to combine. And then we'll pour this right over our feta. We're going to stir this really well to make sure our feta is nicely coated. We're going to cover it and put it in the fridge for about 4 hours or overnight. Then we're going to take it and top our toast with it as soon as it gets through marinating. It's wonderful served just like it is, or for a little more elegant presentation, you can run these under the broiler for just a few minutes until the cheese begins to melt and bubble slightly. This flavorful dish is a great addition to your party menus for summer entertaining.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. It's certainly been about big, bold, and beautiful. That was our theme, and I hope you were inspired by some of the plants, places, food, and people. Any of that information in today's show that you're interested in can be found on my website. That's pallensmith.com. Until next time, from the garden, I'm Alan Smith.
In this garden I dream of a bed of flowers. Bluebirds sing of the beauty all around us. And every time the sun comes out, I can't help but smile. Oh, no, I can't help but smile.